Thank you all very much for coming, and really glad to have you guys here. And now my privilege to present to you Miss Trinity Lawson and her paper, The Story of Redemption.
Yay!
Alright. Quote, "In him we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of our trespasses according to the riches of his grace." End quote. Throughout the early writings of Dante's The Divine Comedy and Homer's The Odyssey, there are many messages hidden within the text. These messages relay themes which oftentimes convey powerful meanings that are compatible with biblical teaching. However, one theme can constantly be found in both of these books, the theme of redemption. Now, as seen in the Divine Comedy, Virgil leads Dante on a long and tedious quest through the circles of the underworld in order that he may reach his ultimate goal, heaven and redemption. As he starts out on his quest, he experiences separation from God, and he must find his way home to heaven by completing his task. While Dante describes his passage across hell and purgatory, he provides us with a more complicated workspace view of his redemption story. After entering paradise and meeting his beloved Beatrice, the two discuss the history of man in the three moments which define his relationship with God: creation, sin, and redemption. It is here that Dante reveals the Christian-based aspect of his story. In the Odyssey, Odysseus struggles for 10 long years through trials and tests, seeking redemption through his journey homeward. For Odysseus to return home and achieve redemption, he must conquer the Cyclops, weather the storm of Poseidon, and resist the temptation of the Sirens. Likewise, he must remember and stay focused on who he is, and not be led astray by his sins and worldly passions. Quote, "Throughout his journey, this character battles life's temptations towards purification, since he must overcome his sins and flaws in order to obtain redemption from the gods, thus returning home to his throne on the island of Ithaca." End quote. However, as Dante and Odysseus embark on their quests, what does redemption look like for them, and does it coincide with the Christian view of redemption? Upon their arrival at the gate of hell, Virgil and Dante cross over the river Acheron, where Dante begins his journey to redemption. In hell there are 9 rings, each one contains crimes, varying from least to greatest, as the inner layers are reached. Passing through the vestibule and entering Circle 1 of hell, Limbo, Dante finds the unbaptized and righteous pagans, whose torture is eternal separation from the presence of God. Descending to Circle 2, Virgil and Dante find the lustful. Since the lustful were carried away by the sins of their passions, they must drift ceaselessly in a violent wind. After witnessing the torment of the lustful, Dante's heart is full of heaviness and pity, and he loses consciousness. When he wakes, he finds himself in the 3rd circle, the eternal dwelling place of the gluttonous. The souls of the gluttonous are not only drenched by a perpetually bitter rain, but they are also beaten and mangled by the monstrous 3-headed dog Cerberus. Quickly passing through the 4th circle, where the two travelers encounter the hoarders and the spendthrifts, Dante and Virgil come to the next circle. Here they see the wrathful, whose sullen hatreds lie gurgling, unable to express themselves for the rage that chokes them. Crossing the remaining levels of the underworld, Dante and Virgil approach the final circle, where they gaze upon the traitors. While frozen in blocks of ice, these souls maul on the heads of those they are near. As Dante exits hell, he expresses, quote, "Toiling upward, caring for no rest at all, my straining sense glimpsed the bright burden of the heavenly cares through a round hole. By this we climbed, and thence came forth to look once more upon the stars." End quote. After discovering the wretched terrors of hell, Dante continues his quest to reach heaven and obtain redemption. Completing his journey through hell, Dante ascends with Virgil into purgatory, where he is refreshed by the sight of the island and the cleanness of the air. In order for him to pass through purgatory into heaven, he must learn the lessons from each of the circles, finding his path to redemption. Approaching the island of purgatory, the two travelers begin to climb the first slope of the mountain. At the base of the cliff, they find the souls of the excommunicate, who, quote, "are condemned to wander as sheep that have no shepherd, 30 times as long as their contumacy lasted upon earth." End quote. While in the second terrace of Antipurgatory, Dante gazes upon the 4 stars, which appeared in the sky before sunrise. After daybreak, the 4 stars set with the 3 stars taking their place on the horizon. The 3 stars represent the 3 pagan virtues: faith, hope, and charity. In addition, Dante and Virgil also encountered the three steps, which signify the steps, quote, of penitence, confession, contrition, and satisfaction, end quote. This depiction, which Dante provides of the steps of penitence, gives us a better understanding of a works-based aspect of his journey. Now, as the two travelers pass through Peter's Gate, they ascend into the first cornice of lower purgatory, where they are met by the proud. The souls of the proud are punished with a burden of endlessly carrying heavy stones. Quote, taken in its wider aspect, pride is the head and root of all sin. It is the endeavor to be as God, making self, instead of God, the creature about which the will and desire resolve. End quote. Because these souls are not permitted to dwell in the land of paradise, they pray to God, desperately begging him to bring to them his kingdom. As the souls of the proud approach Dante and Virgil, they utter a variation of the Lord's Prayer, saying, quote, Our Father, dwelling in the heavens, hallowed thy name be, and the power thereof. Let come to us, let come thy kingdom's peace. End quote. As Virgil guides Dante through the remainder of lower purgatory, he continues to learn the lessons which lie along his road to redemption. Entering middle purgatory, Dante and Virgil now come to the fourth cornice, where they are met by the souls of the slothful. Because the sins of the slothful result from the laziness of not only the body, but the mind and soul, these spirits must run tirelessly around the cornice. Quote, the penance assigned to it takes the form of the practice of the opposite virtue, an act of zeal. On this cornice alone, no verbal prayer is provided for the penitents. For them, to labor is to pray. End quote. Before resuming their journey and beginning their ascent to the fifth cornice, the two travelers find a place to lay down and rest. While sleeping, Dante begins to dream, and he hears the voice of a siren. As the siren calls to him, she tells of the Greek hero Odysseus, singing, quote, Lo, the sweet siren, yea, 'tis I, who lead the mariners in mid-sea astray. Such pleasures in my melting measures lie. I turn Ulysses from his wandering way. End quote. This reverence, which Dante describes, is alluding to the Greek hero Odysseus and his quest to obtain redemption by returning home. Throughout his voyage homeward, he and his crew are faced with much adversity, which they must overcome if they are to return home. One of these trials that they encounter is the temptation of the sirens. Awakened from his dream by Virgil, Dante and his guide, with assistance from the Angel of Zeal, are directed to the stairway which will lead them on the final part of their excursion. Dante, after witnessing the anguished souls of the purgatory, now approaches the final stages of a journey to paradise and redemption. Ascending the stairway to the fifth cornice, Dante and Virgil find themselves in upper purgatory. As they enter the fifth cornice, they observe the souls of the covetous, whose punishment is to be bound lying face downwards into the ground. Quote, being bent on earthly matters, here bends them in their own despite. As love of all true good was quenched in us by avarice, fettered and tied by hands and feet, outstretched and motionless, we must lie prone. End quote. After encountering these spirits, Dante is met by Pope Adrian V, who shares his story and tells Dante that there is no greater suffering in purgatory than that which they have just witnessed. Pope Adrian, like the other souls, represents an image of covetous,